Hi there, I'm Tom Field. I'm Senior Vice President of Editorial with Information Security Media Group, and I want to welcome you to our latest cybersecurity leadership discussion. Today, we're talking about cybersecurity marketing leadership. We're talking about the increased noise and lookalike vendors crowding the market segments. So to give you some background on what we're going to talk about here today, Momentum Cyber tells us there are now more than 3,500 serious vendors in the cybersecurity space. The landscape has grown crowded, noisy, and competitive. In today's episode, we want to address some of the ways in which leading cybersecurity marketers are dealing in an era driven by intense competition. In particular, our panelists today all represent Israeli cybersecurity companies whose markets have been growing rapidly, with investments in Israeli cybersecurity startups increasing to 1.4 billion last year, representing almost 30% of global VC activity. This in response to the growth in global customer demand for innovative solutions that address new and evolving attack methodologies. It's a lot to tackle, but we're going to do it in the next hour here. To get started, let me introduce our panelists today. Please join me in welcoming Gily Netzer, CMO with Cymulate.
Hello.
We've got Dori Harpaz, VP of Marketing with Cynet. Jonathan Kaftzan, VP of Marketing with Deep Instinct. Nimrod Reichenberg, CMO with Siemplify. Maya Rotenberg, VP of Marketing with WhiteSource. And Idan Hershkovich, VP of Corporate Marketing and Growth with Cato Networks. Folks, thank you so much for joining me here for this discussion today. Okay, to start, let's talk about the noise in the space. With over $900 million in funding during April alone, over 100 cybersecurity startups entering the space in Israel alone, Israeli marketers who are dealing with increased global noise now have to compete with an explosion of messaging targeting the same security professionals. So my question, and Gily, I'd love for you to take this first and for others to weigh in. Why do you think there are so many vendors and solutions today? Why so much noise?
So I think understanding the evolution of communication since ancient times can really tap into this. So I will give a little bit of background on this because I actually find it fascinating to stop once in a while and look back and what really happened. So, even from the cavemen sitting around the fire, inscribing on caves, using smoke signal, using minimal verbal communication, limited, written words. Think how long we've been through that time of when the print developed, the newspaper, the postal system, even, postal system was a horse and carriage. They used pigeons for long distance communication, the telegraph, the radio, the fax. It's really crazy how things have evolved. Even the telephone, the regular telephone that we had is long gone. So the 20th century introduced radio for further use by the military and commercial broadcasting. And later on, telephone network became, public, black and white TV broadcasting, PC, the first cellular network, then mobile phones, first websites, search engines, and all of this, generated a lot of users for what, we never used to have, but have today, the online media. So I think around the 1990s, there were about 300 million users. But in the 21st century, when Wi-Fi became mainstream and internet was added to mobile phones and social networking began, Instagram, e-commerce, Netflix, Amazon Prime, with all of this, over 400 billion users in 2019. So with that, as the communication evolved, also cybercrime evolved alongside this digital transformation, and the security gaps were created, right? So did the cybersecurity solutions and the vendors. And so, for example, if in the 90s they had computer virus, which was born, then signature-based prevention was invented. Later on, as the viruses evolved into malware variants, and Anonymous was founded, then the behavior-based detect and response solutions were created, and so on. And really the evolvement of technology in terms of communication creates the security gaps, which attackers leverage on, and so the security vendors and the startups are leveraging on too.
So from my perspective, the reason we have so many cybersecurity companies, because the cybersecurity problem is only getting bigger and bigger, and it's getting bigger faster than anything else probably in the world of IT. Therefore, you have plenty of companies trying to solve part of it, or a small part of it, right? Which is only creates more problems. So a market that is growing double digit to most part is bringing a lot of opportunities to many entrepreneurs trying to solve different parts of it. I think this is the main driver. And this is why we see so many different companies, and especially, by the way, in Israel, joining this party.
Right. I think if you just look at stats, cybercrime has exploded, right? If you just look no further, and all the breaches and actually, if you're a criminal today and you're kind of considering which area of crime you should go to, cybercrime is the most lucrative, right? By every measure. I mean, the chance of success is pretty high. The chance of getting caught is pretty low, right? I mean, how many areas of crime, just stopping the crime is considered a success. Catching the criminal, that happens once in a blue moon. So whether it's cybercrime, there will be solutions trying to better protect against attacks. And that's why there's, again, this inundation of vendors stepping into the cybersecurity space. Now, are there too many? And by the way, also, if you look at financial outcomes, if you look at, is there success as a cybersecurity vendor? There certainly is, right? There's a lot more investments, a lot more public companies in cybersecurity, a lot of exits as well. So the financial motivation is there not only on the attacker side, but also on the vendor side. Now, are there too many cybersecurity companies out there? The answer is probably yes, right? I mean, for every successful exit or IPO that makes a lot of headlines, there's many more companies that die a very quiet death, right? Companies always die very quietly. There's certainly a lot of reasons for a lot of companies to enter the space. But I would say there's probably too many cybersecurity companies right now, which I think is a great backdrop for this conversation, right? So how do you communicate in an effective way, market in an effective way, so you will end up with that, headline about the IPO and not the quiet death?
I think you just need to walk the floor at the exhibition floor at RSA to understand how many cybersecurity vendors there are, and to understand what CIOs and CISOs are dealing with. Different messaging, everyone highlighting different issues, all claiming to be able to prevent your next data breach. And I think there's, in very high level, debate between CISOs and CIOs about whether to go to the large vendors that can provide a one-stop solution, but in most cases, an average solutions for specific niches, or to go to the best of breed. Smaller, specialized vendors that can provide something advanced and unique. And I think this is where us as startups, as cybersecurity startups, this is really our trick to understand how to tell the story to make them actually make the decision not to go to the large vendors, and actually convince them that there is a specific need for their company, for their vertical, for their technology.
COVID-19 is actually a good example of the fact that the demand for cybersecurity is relatively steady. I've seen it in my company, and I've talking to a lot of colleagues who haven't seen a slowdown in business selling cybersecurity solution, although the pandemic has hurt businesses a lot, but companies cannot afford not buying security and being less protected, even if situation outside is hard. So I think actually now we're seeing not all companies, but definitely a lot of cybersecurity companies are still growing, although of the business situation in the US. And I think that's a very good evidence of how steady and growing is the demand for cybersecurity solutions.
Everyone, I'm talking from the product standpoint. I think that everyone have a great on top kind of a technology that doesn't interfere with the existing interface, with the existing infrastructure, with the existing timeline of the CISOs. So that's something that is actually creates less, I would say, less bumpy ride in exchanging ideas with the CISO. Less friction with the existing gear. So that's something that actually creates more possibilities for more companies to interfere and suggest maybe new angles of securing the perimeter.
I want to move on to a similar topic, which is about communication. Currently, we count 438 cybersecurity companies operating in Israel today. So there's a ton of information already out in the marketplace. Google's current count of indexed pages is approaching 50 billion pages. So it can be hard to break through the clutter and have your voice heard. From a marketing standpoint, one of the biggest challenges for startups, especially that use cutting edge technology, is being able to communicate the value of that technology in a way that's clear and understandable and bypasses the saturation effect. So my question, Dori, I'd love if you would take this one first. What are you doing to address this noisy environment? In other words, what communication technologies do you use in order to break through this noise?
So for example, one of the things I've seen by listening to sales calls that we're doing is that the real wow effect is only happens when the prospect actually sees the product and what's the difference. So for example, it took me into direction of using lots of videos, actually showing the product. So, you know, back in the days, a typical B2B cybersecurity company would have told the prospect, you want to see a demo, leave your details, we'll then coordinate a call with the salesperson, right? And then we will show you personally the platform, but you won't get any access or any visibility into it before you do that, right? Those times have changed. You can see many cybersecurity companies offering free trials, so you can actually come and try the product yourself. Companies like Cynet who are giving you a free on-demand demo of the full product, right? Even before you even leave your details or talk to anyone. So I think that's one approach of making your platform way more accessible, either through free trials or just public demos. And the second thing is, when I do use written communication with different collaterals, ebooks and stuff, I always try to think of, I would say, provocative or even sexy headlines that will be able to raise above the noise. Because if the number of new collateral and assets that are being created by cybersecurity companies on a daily basis is enormous.
I think the holy grail here is to basically use content marketing and align it with the buying cycle. So if you think the space is too crowded, go back in the buying cycle. Do not engage with people on selection. Go back to research. Go back to latent pain. Go back to life is good. Then you'll get more engagement with the prospect, even though it's not ripe enough. It's something that you can start working on that valse of communication, and slowly push it towards a better understanding your product or better understanding their issues and challenges.
And I think that if you are able to focus on who exactly are you solving the pain for and what is the specific pain point, your communication gets much more focused and effective. And then really it's a matter of really bringing high quality, valuable content that will start the engagement.
What we have found that happened during the COVID-19, while the statistics say that the demand is growing, but right now no one is doing events, so everyone is using digital channels, everyone is trying to do the same tactics, everyone is using their SDR teams, and I think CISOs are basically immune. They don't answer their phone, they don't leave details or anything like that. Therefore, what we have done and we have found that is very effective is actually going much narrower, much more focused. Instead of trying to get a lot of people, we're trying to get a smaller group of people where they can meet us and only us for a meaningful discussion. So roundtables, small webinars, intimate sessions, and with a lot of help from our friends, meaning partners, distributors, resellers that we work with, that they have the relationship, they have the networking, and they know who the customers that are actually looking to buy, which is also very important, I think. You have to distinguish between people that want to learn and you want to nurture that and you want to kind of, give all the data you can to people who are actually looking to buy a product of like yours.
I still see so many cybersecurity vendors make the mistake where I want to speak to the, to the top dog. Get me the CISO on the phone, right? So like I said, they're immune because guess what? There's 3,800 other vendors that want to get the CISO on the phone. But even if you could, you would often be surprised how little the CISO is involved, especially in big companies, in purchasing decision. He or she doesn't care, right? There's somebody that reports to them or even more than one level down. They're the one who's going to read your marketing materials and decide whether to buy your product or whether you're better than the competition.
And whether we use account-based marketing or predictive marketing, leveraging video, leveraging, the right people writing the content. At the end of the day, we need to try and fit the way we talk, the way we communicate, the way we translate the features to benefits into the needs of our prospect. And to do that well, we want to do it relationship-based, is what I'm saying.
I want to transition to our next discussion. We talked about breaking through the noise. Now let's talk about actually reaching your customers. So Gartner tells us that 70-90% of the B2B buying process is over before buyers reach out to salespeople. Every cybersecurity vendor may have the perfect solution to a buyer's problem, but if your content isn't reaching them in an effective way, you won't be heard. So my question, Jonathan, please take this first. You all said content is important. What are you doing to make it important?
One of the biggest effort we had this year was to bring the voice of our customer. We have started a program to have as many reviews as we can by our customers on Gartner Peer Insight. We've been active on peer review website like IT Central, and we got customer reviews there. Case studies, video testimonials. That was one of my biggest focuses this year in order to bring the voice of our customers to the market. So it's not Deep Instinct talking about Deep Instinct, it's about Deep Instinct customers talking about Deep Instinct. And I think the name of the game, especially these times, is to find where the customer is looking for information when he is actually looking to purchase, either to replace an existing solution or when he has a new project that he wants to launch. And finding those places is critical in order to generate meaningful and qualified pipeline to your company, which I think today is probably the most important thing for everyone.
My content marketing strategy is not just focused about finding the customer at the critical point when they're starting the buyer journey, although it is very important, but I'm also marketing my content and my solutions to analysts, to journalists, to influencers, in order to make sure that if they're not starting the buyer journey with us, but with Gartner or Forrester or with discussing with influencers and other leaders, our name will come up. So it's really important not just to focus on your buyers, but look at the entire buyer journeys and influencers in that journey.
To ensure that our content reaches as many people as possible, of course, hopefully as many relevant people as possible, we really focus a lot on force multipliers and amplification. And force multipliers can be alliance partners, right? Just partnering with even cybersecurity vendors that are just much bigger than ours, and we can jointly do joint activities to get that content in front of more people. It could be channel partners. It can even be vendors coming together, right? I'll give an example. We are now putting together a virtual event, right? There's so many virtual events out there, right? How do you break through the noise, et cetera? So two things. One, we try to make it, of course, very creative and different, but we also join forces with several other cybersecurity vendors. So it's not just one company, it's 9 companies, pushing that that content in that form of virtual event out. We've joined forces with a lot of security practitioners who are speakers, and they push it out. And so far, so good. Our registration numbers are through the roof. Again, surely because of this amplification effect.
Actually, I would like to offer what not to do in order to, have an authentic voice. So first of all, I would probably avoid using the, scare tactics. I think people are tired of it. They know it. We're talking about people that they know what's out there. So I don't think that adds any value. I would also avoid over-promising. There are no silver bullets. Everybody knows that. Everybody has been saying it's not, it's not if, it's when you'll get breached and all of that kind of talk. So let's not over-promise what we can't. Talking about 0 false positives, talking about, 100% prevention, all of that stuff. And finally, I would probably be, I would notice, using superlatives or buzzwords that are overused, whether it's, relating to the technology like AI, machine learning, or just, marketing talk like best of breed, the first ever. So this kind of stuff, people just, they leave it at that moment, I believe. So these are my don'ts.
You basically said that 70% of the buying cycle is done elsewhere without being outreach to the vendor. So I'm kind of asking, where does this research is being done? And that basically brings up that intent that Jonathan was referring to, which I believe it's like the new black of dimension. So we can basically intercept companies that are in education or research mode on a third-party websites. And then we generate a meaningful interaction in a perfect alignment to their interest. So there's a match, there's a huge likelihood for that first engagement to happen. And we basically do outbound marketing. We use valuable, insightful content, perfect match with the lead buying cycle that basically create that first engagement, and try to walk this person hand in hand through the buying cycle by providing insightful data that is not just about the product, but also about the challenge, about the pain, about the industry, and so on. So catching them early outside of the website, I think that's very valuable to cut through that noise, I believe.
Let's talk about sales and marketing. Most companies in this space experience a common disconnect between the sales and the marketing organizations, despite both striving to achieve the same results. Quick segmentation, live streaming, predictive analytics, personalized communications, they don't always create marketing leads that convert directly into sales. So my question, Nimi, I'd love to hear from you first on this. What are the leading tactics that you have found to work consistently in bridging this gap between marketing and sales?
The number one goal, we have a couple and I'll touch on them, but the number one goal for my marketing team is revenue, right? It's not leads, it's not pipeline, it's not, a number of opportunities, number of meetings, it's revenue. And when I go to my sales counterpart and say, we are in the same boat together, I mean it. We are in the same boat because we're measured on revenue, right? And you never want to be that CMO that at a board meeting said, hey, we had an amazing quarter. We're at 130% of our MQL number. And then they turn over to sales, says, well, how did you do? Well, yeah, we were at 70% of our sales number, right? That's you're defining conflict of interest right there, right? So yes, we have an MQL goal and we have a pipeline goal, all that stuff, but the number one, the biggest goal is revenue. And that's the key to making sure you're aligned with sales. And by the way, so some of my teams came from different companies and they turned to me and said, hey, Nimi, but we generate this lead and we have this opportunity. We have no control. We have very little control over what happens to that opportunity, if it converts to revenue or not. And I say two things to that objection, right? Number one, we want alignment with sales. We got to align our goals. Number one. Number two, if you think that salesperson has full control over whether that opportunity is going to convert or not, you've got another thing coming, right? Who knows what the competition is going to do? Is the POC going to be okay? Is the product, our budget's going to get cut on the customer's side, right? So, this is, closing business is full of uncertainty and we have to have skin in the game. So that's number one, shared goals. And the number two thing that I will say, again, common practice or common knowledge, but not always common practice, is just make sure we agree with sales on every definition, right? Target accounts, who are we targeting? That has to be a handshake between sales and marketing. MQLs, what is a good lead? That has to be a handshake between sales and marketing. And we also revisit that every now and again, right? Oh, we thought this is a good MQL. 3 months in, we said, well, 90% of the leads that came in through this way are not really good. So we tweak the definition. At least once a quarter, make sure that you and sales are aligned on, who are we targeting? What constitutes a good lead, et cetera, et cetera. So those, good align on definitions and shared metrics go a long way.
You have to have an SDR team reporting to marketing. Once you have an SDR team reporting to marketing, you immediately stop talking about leads and MQL and you start talking about opportunities. I don't talk with our sales on leads. I don't talk about MQLs. For me, this is a BS language, I talk about opportunities. And I gave my SDR team the access to Salesforce, and they actually open opportunities on Salesforce, and then they allocate the opportunity to a salesperson. Now, what I told them that with great power comes great responsibility, because if you open opportunity on Salesforce and it's garbage, it's junk, salespeople are going to yell on you. Okay, but the only way that I believe that you can bridge that gap, if you are taking the accountability on the pipeline using an SDR team that is reporting to you. Immediately, you stop talking about leads and MQL, and you start to talk about how much pipeline did you open for this company.
I would add that listen to feedback, listen to calls, attend focus calls. Basically, try to understand the journey, basically the same as you do, Jonathan, and try to look for the commonalities, whether it was like a great lead or an opportunity or a bad one, where does it coming from, content, source, use case. Try to kind of shuffle all in your head, and then you'll have like the next campaign and the next activity that will double down or to scale on those successful opportunities.
Bridging the gap between sales and marketing is all about, you know, the quality of what you deliver, whether it's leads, MQLs, appointments, opportunities, and of course the communication. One can't avoid the tight alignment with the sales team. At the end of the day, it's like any other relationship. The more communication and better communication you have, the better the results will be.
And I think right now, in recent years, there's been tons of new marketing technologies that has actually empowered marketing teams to help sales throughout the entire journey, through the consideration and the POC and the selling, and even through usage and renewal. And there shouldn't be a handshake. And I think we need to understand that we're running in parallels, and marketing and sales should play together. And it is something that, from my experience, I found that some sales teams are, it's not intuitive for them. SDRs want to make sure that they're the only one reaching the customers. Sales managers, account managers want to own the opportunity and make sure no one else is talking to them. And we need to define new roles to the game in order to really leverage all of the technologies that we as marketers have.
One of the challenges between marketing and sales are the fact that the sales a lot of times do not know exactly what the marketing are doing, or do not get enough heads up on marketing activities. So we actually took an extreme approach there, and we're managing all of the marketing tasks, budget, and calendar on a shared document that anyone from sales can approach at any given moment. So in real time, any SDR or inside sales manager can go into a shared document and see exactly what campaigns are we working on, how much money are we spending on those, which webinars are we going to launch, which type of collateral assets or partner activities are we working on. At the minute they have this transparency and visibility into what the marketing are working on and about to launch, then the synchronization between the marketing and sales is way better, because there is no question of what are you working on, where are you spending money, are you doing the right things, because the sales know at any given moment what are we working on.
I want to move on and talk about fighting headwinds. So the COVID-19 pandemic has had a devastating economic impact globally. You've had entire industries gutted financially, resulting in bankruptcies, job loss, reduced budgets. So the question I have in mind, I'd love for you to take this one first. With your prospective customers facing these economic headwinds, let's say, how do you respond to their desire to right-size their cybersecurity investments, consolidate their tools, and perhaps live within very limited means for at least the next year?
We're not really seeing that in many of our customers, regardless of the industry. The need for cybersecurity, as we started this conversation, is high. Management teams are scared of data breaches, since data breaches can actually ruin a company today. We all need to show that we can protect our own data and our customers' data. But what we did learn that through COVID, that managers right now are looking for visibility and control. And if you can show them that you can provide them the visibility and control. This is something that is making an urgency to implement your solution. So this is really the main focus for us in order to accelerate sales.
COVID-19 created grave consequences globally and unique circumstances for change. And with that, for CISOs, it changed the definition of the network and the assets they are required to protect. And due to the transition of workforce now working from home and their use of personally owned devices and networks, this all comes together. And the CISOs have also had to manage the personal and occupational impacts of the pandemic of their team. So this has created an advantageous playground for the attackers that resulted in the increase in cybercrime activity. And this impacted us, the security vendors. Nevertheless, we consistently work to understand the evolving customer challenges and the priorities to adjust ourselves to those. We also realize that prospects will have different goals to cater and will cater to them differently. So there are many use cases, some of which became more popular, and we have noticed them, I guess all of us, for choosing the right solution, like in these days with working from home or merger and acquisitions. So a while back, I published an article still this year that mentions the rise of phishing websites between January to March. And it showed that there was a spike of 350% in phishing. And so these new circumstances created an urgency of security budgets by companies that are more security aware and more mature, but they also halted the spend for many other companies. So as a result of this pandemic, we asked ourselves, how does this situation impact customers and prospects' revenue? And would they freeze the projects and decrease operational expenditure? If we hadn't created awareness so far, what would be the likelihood of catching their attention right now? And should we transfer efforts from lead generation to pipeline acceleration or to upselling and customer retention? So I would say that asking ourselves these kind of questions can provide better alignment to the changing times and circumstances.
Cybersecurity has proven to be fairly recession-proof, and we're seeing that for the most part in COVID. I think there are a couple of adjustments. One, of course, is reevaluate your target market. If you were very successful in the airline business or in the hospitality business, you may want to rethink that now, right? Because there are certain industries that obviously have been hit very hard and are going to spend a lot less. So make sure that you're still happy with your target market. The second thing is, where applicable, right? And only if it's authentic, it doesn't hurt to message how you help for COVID-19, right? And I'll say that because, again, I think we as marketers all too often just jump on the latest trend and buzzwords, and it sounds so inauthentic, and our target market are intelligent people. They see right through it. So I see so many vendors, you see, we have the #1 whiz bang security for X, right? And 2 weeks after COVID broke up, they changed their homepage. We have the #1 security whiz bang optimized for remote working. It's like, if it's not real, shut up.
What we're seeing very clearly in the COVID era is that companies are looking to consolidate, and they're not buying the, I would call, niche, nice to have security solutions. They're going back to basics, and they want to make sure they have solid basic and automation and anything that can save them money and time. And actually a platform like Cynet, which is an all-in-one platform that's used to replace many different siloed solutions, is actually seeing hyper growth at this time, because this is exactly what CISOs are looking for now. So for us, it's actually a positive trend that CISOs are looking to save money and use less products and use more consolidated platform rather than a lot of different siloed solutions.
On one end, we have that dissolving perimeter, everyone are working from home. On the other hand, maybe on top of that, people or CISOs are looking for converged solutions instead of adding another gear on top of the existing gear. Now there's SASE, that's a new category coined by Gartner. Basically, this is what Cato was built 6 years ago. And so we see a great demand from companies to be able to provide security and networking and secure access to their organization.
So adding to the problem space, increased pressure on marketing spend is up the ante in terms of ROI expectations. So my question, and Dan, I'd love for you to take this first. I want to hear from each of you as we wrap up our conversation today. What have you found to be your most effective strategy for dealing with budget reallocation realities as we end 2020 and we go into 2021?
The event industry basically died on us. So we try to find tools within the digital ecosystem to accommodate those needs. We shift our budget around and invest more in content syndication, advertising, try to double down the intent that I mentioned earlier. And basically, I think we compensated the fact that there were no events or no kind of, even the virtual events are not really events. So this is basically what we did. I think that on digital, you have a much more option to scale up or scale down. You do it more rapidly versus, let's say, an event that you kind of preparing yourself throughout the year. On digital, you can do it scale up, scale down within a matter of weeks. So that's something that we saw very impactful in terms of our demand gen capabilities.
Don't measure only marketing generate pipeline, also measure marketing influenced pipeline. What I've found to be very interesting is that our digital channels may not generate the opportunities, but they're very, very influential on the opportunities that may come from other sources, partners, salespeople, referrals, etc. And it's very interesting to see and show the way that we supported the life cycle of the opportunity until it was closed. We definitely see correlation between the wins to how much engaged that opportunity was with the collateral, with webinars, with the emails, etc., that we provided during the journey. So I think this is a very important KPI to show. Another thing that I said earlier, and I think it's very important, and these days, instead of going wide, go narrow. Try to have much more intimate sessions with potential buyers. And the way to get it is either work with your partners, that they have the relationship, or with third parties that organize those sessions. A very interesting event that we have done is wine tasting and whiskey tasting, where the participant got a box with wine that they can taste during so connecting the virtual world with the physical world has been very kind of interesting and a lot of fun for our potential buyers and customers. And that became, I think, the most valuable and qualified channel for us to generate real pipeline to this company. Digital channels are important. We invest a lot in them, but I don't see them as generating pipeline, but more supporting the pipeline that we already have.
For us, events was a critical channel. We were supposed to do in 2020 150, 160 events worldwide. You can't replace that with roundtables and private dinners and intimate events. What we did is actually double down on digital, and we created new digital assets like online databases and thought leadership websites in order to really increase the awareness. It is not something that will help you get the right specific audience at the point where they're actually considering or evaluating new solutions, but it's something that will help you start the conversation at an earlier point, together with the private intimate events and creating more innovative, unique, edgy digital assets. I think this is the right combination to compensate for the loss of events and, of course, wait for them to come back eventually someday.
Content is still king. The only problem is with 3,800 cybersecurity vendors, there's a very high bar for content that will break through the noise, right? But if it's educational and or entertaining, it's still king. How you package it, you can play around with it. You can do a webinar, you can put that content in a white paper and syndicate it. You can have a little virtual event around it. But if the content is good and the bar is high, people will still come. And one thing that I would urge every marketing organization, at least that's my philosophy, is quality over quantity, right? Back in the day, everybody was telling us, think like a publisher, right? Put out a blog post every day, just like a publisher, no matter what. And I say this day, don't think like a publisher, right? If you put out on Monday the 5 tips for working from home that people have read 10,000 times, everywhere else, that does you no good, right? If you can only come up with great content twice a month, put out 2 blog posts, right? But people will wait in line to read those blog posts because they're so new and creative.
The times of reduced budget, it's even more important than ever. And for me, it's basic for years, but I was actually shocked to know that some marketeers don't do it at all. Analyze your data. Understand what has driven the most ROI, reduce initiatives that didn't add much value, and double down on what has proved itself. And of course, if events prove themselves, physical events, forget about it for now. Also, if you're a SaaS-based cyber solution, then you have one more advantage where you can really leverage on your own basic technology in order to give value to the prospect, right? You can give them the use of the solution, giving something of value to your prospect for a test drive or for a limited time, and ask nothing in return. At the end of the day, I think that the vendors will probably come out stronger in terms of brand recognition that is based on trust. And this, at the end of the day, this could lead to more customers. Lastly, being a startup, whether in continuous security validation or other categories, you want to go where your audience is. And they're no longer going to the RSA and the info security and the DEF CON and the black hats. And that is a great pain for us marketeers. But with that, the opportunity is risen from more digital options. So change from the regular content syndication to content syndication that is intent-based, change from quantity to quality, invest in SEO and PPC to drive more brand awareness and traffic to your own website or to a thought leadership website like Maya mentioned. So these are the things that I find that would serve well for, I guess, budget reallocation.
For me, it's about creativity. So I think that as time passes, just sticking to the traditional marketing channels as content syndication and other things isn't enough. You have to think creative. And when I say creative, I mean across everything we do. So for example, our relationship with our partners, right? So we're trying to be creative there. For example, if we know that there is a partner that's not very strong in marketing, right? We would offer them maybe give us your leads and we will do the email marketing for them because we're better than you in email marketing. You'll be surprised how many partners actually are glad to pass on their database to you so you can do marketing on their behalf, right? So it's creativity with partners. It's creativity with your own activities. So we did a competition for incident responders. We had 2,300 participants from all over the world without investing $1 in promoting it. Just it went word to mouth. It became very viral just because of the fact that it was something that hasn't been done before. So lots of thinking about like different activities that you can do. There are different.
Well, very good. I want to thank each of you for your time, for your insights. It's been fascinating. So panelists, thank you so much for your time today. Those of you that watched this, thank you so much for tuning in to this topic today on cybersecurity marketing leadership. We've talked about the noise and how to stand out in the crowd at a time when you can't gather a crowd. Thank you so much for your attention today. Please suggest other topics, other speakers you'd like to hear at future panels. Until then, for Information Security Media Group, I'm Tom Field. Thank you so much for watching us today.